Coming up on this issue of Sector 2815, we'll take a look at the news from the past week, and I'll tell you the story of which DC's Silver Age key is indirectly responsible for the creation of the entire Marvel Universe. Stay tuned. Hi there. Thanks for coming back to issue number 2 of Sector 2815. I'm Paul Cook, and as I told you last time, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my comic book collection. I've been collecting comics for just under 50 years, and I have about 30,000 comics in my collection. Now, about 75 to 80% of those comics are DC, all the way from back in the Golden Age up until comics that you may have found on the shelves just last week. And that leaves about 25 to 20% of comics that are Marvel and other publishers. Now, hopefully over the course of this year, you're going to see me as I try to fill in, especially my Marvel collection. I really want to try to get a lot of the Marvel keys and really kind of bolster up that part of my collection. So hopefully you'll be along for the ride. So that's just a small part about my comic book collection. You'll see more of it as the weeks go by. But for right now, let's take a quick look at the news. The big news was from the DC Comics solicitations when they announced that the World of Fables is returning to DC. The acclaimed series by Bill Willingham and Mark Buckingham will be returning later this year, but in the meantime, DC is going to whet your appetite with the Fables' first crossover into the DC Universe with the release of Batman vs. Bigby. Bigby, the big bad wolf of legend, serves as Fabletown's sheriff in the Vertigo series, and he will cross paths with the Dark Knight in a one-shot in September. In the absence of a series starring Arthur Curry as Aquaman, because why would they? They're only making a second movie about him. DC will be releasing a 6-issue miniseries entitled Aquaman: The Becoming, featuring Jackson Hyde, previously known as Aqualad. Hyde is the son of the villainous Black Manta and will be taking on the mantle of Aquaman in the series. And Deathstroke teams up with Black Canary in his new series Deathstroke Incorporated. In the series, a new group called Trust hires Slade Wilson to take down the heavy-hitting villains of the DC Universe. And speaking of heavy hitters, it's by the creative team of Joshua Williamson and Howard Porter. And that's just a few of the highlights from the DC solicits that came out last week. A recurring segment we'll have here on Sector 2815 is a segment that I'm calling WTF. That stands for, well, you know what it stands for. We'll take a look at the quirky side of the comic book industry. The writers, the artists, the editors, the publishers, the local comic book shops, you name it. And we'll take a look at things that have happened in the past that just make you scratch your head and say, what were they thinking? Or we'll take a look at past events in comic book history and maybe shine a new light on them. For instance, today we're going to take a look at what DC key was indirectly responsible for the creation of the Marvel Modern Universe. And that key was The Brave and the Bold number 28, the first appearance of the Justice League of America. The story goes that the publishers of Marvel and DC were golfing buddies. And the publisher of DC said to Martin Goodman, who was the publisher of Marvel at the time, hey, you know what? I have this hit book with this group, this team book, the Justice League of America. And so Martin Goodman went back to Stan Lee and said, you know, the folks over at DC, they have this hit with this Justice League of America, a team book. Why don't you give me a team book? And so Stan Lee got together with Jack Kirby and created the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four number 1 was the first book of the modern Marvel age. And so that's how the Fantastic Four was created. We'll take a look at more WTF events in future episodes. So thanks very much for joining us on issue number 2 of Sector 2815. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe and click on the bell to make sure that you're alerted whenever new videos are uploaded. As always, I'm Paul Cook, and you're now leaving Sector 2815. Thanks for joining us.